Hello friends and fiends, it's Pixie back with another Netflix horror fix, and this time we are looking at the Amityville Horror, well, the remake of the Amityville Horror. This is another based on a true story. Now, if you thought the backstory for, what was it called, American Haunting was complicated, you ain't seen nothing yet, my friends. This one has, before I talk about the film, I'll talk a bit about the backstory, because honestly the backstory is slightly more interesting than the film itself. Basically, in the mid-70s, there was a fairly horrific mass murder in a house in, gosh, whereabouts? Somewhere in America, anyway. I think it's sort of New Jersey, New York way. I can't remember off the top of my head. Hang on, I'm just having a look. No, can't remember. Not important anyway. A lad named Ronald DeFeo Jr. gunned down the rest of his family, and or at least that's what most people think happened. DeFeo himself has given a whole load of different possible reasons for the murders, none of which sound particularly plausible. One was involving a hitman, another was, something else going on. I'm not sure for certain, but most accounts I've looked at seem to suggest that he was very unwell. The house then stayed empty for about a year, and was then sold off very, very cheap to a family called the Lutzes. George Lutz and Kathleen Lutz, and Kathleen's children. I think George was their stepfather? I ought to double check that, shouldn't I? Oh, well, never mind. Now, during this period, they were only in the house for about 28 days. A lot of strange stuff reportedly happened. Now, the reason we know this is it became a very famous and very successful novel by, sorry, I'm just checking the name, Jay Anson, called The Amityville Horror. Anson's marketing campaign pretty much played up the based on a true story, it's like The Exorcist, only it really happened. Fun fact, The Exorcist story is also based on a true story, very, very loosely. How loose the Amityville Horror story is depends on who you're asking. There's a huge amount of controversy about this story. Anson's publisher claims, publisher or marketer, ex-lawyer agent, I believe, claims that the pair of them made it up over bottles of wine and none of it happened. George and, well, I'm not sure what Kathleen ever said about it. It seems to be George Lutz who has been most vocal about the story, claims that a lot of it happened and some of it didn't. The priest who supposedly came to the house says that no, he never came to the house, it was only over a phone call, but he was involved. There's a lot of back and forth going on, a lot of controversy over this one. I have to confess I've never actually read the book, but the story gets reprinted a lot because I get the impression it was very popular at the time. About 5 years later, the book becomes made into a film, The Amityville Horror, the original version, in sort of 1979, I think. Hang on, I'm really bad at dates, I'm sorry, I'm a historian who is hopeless at dates. This is why I did, 1979, this is why I did classics and not other history, because I'm bad at dates. So yeah, 1979 the film comes out, again to a sea of controversy. It was fairly popular with the audiences, really unpopular with critics. Critics seem to really hate it. George Lutz has made a few claims against it, particularly made claims against the sequels, of which there are many, coming to a head with this version, which I'm going to be reviewing in a second, which came out in 2005, shortly after Kathleen Lutz had died. The two divorced in the 80s, I believe. George Lutz unfortunately died not long after, with a as yet unfinished defamation lawsuit against the film. He was absolutely furious with the film, and to be honest, looking at this film, I can't blame him. It's really unkind to him. You know what I was saying about An American Haunting, where I was saying, yeah, don't be a dick about real people. Especially don't be a dick about real people if they're still alive. This film is very, very unkind to him. I mean, the original film wasn't particularly kind to him, but this is even worse. Yeah, he filed several lawsuits against this when it came out. He filed a few lawsuits, I believe, against some of the other films for breaking contracts, and including various things that definitely didn't happen and aren't even in the book. The thing he really took issue with, apparently, with the 2005 version, i.e. the one we're looking at, was that in this version he kills a family dog. That doesn't appear in any other version, and he was very upset about that, which is fair. I mean, yeah. As with a lot of these based on stories, the film versions elaborate. It sounds like the book version has elaborated, so this is an elaboration on an elaboration on an elaboration. The entire backstory is very muddy. I don't think we're ever going to find out what happened with this one. Either way, it sounded like it was a very unpleasant month for the entire family, I mean, I don't know how much of it is true, but it's a very strange story with a lot of peculiar things going on. This movie, incidentally, did equally badly with critics as the original did back in the day, but with critics now comparing the two and saying, yeah, the original was better. To be honest, neither of them are particularly great films, and I would say they both have their strengths. The original is fairly subtle and a slow build. This is pretty much bang, 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 but it does have some quite interesting imagery. The special effects guys and the makeup guys definitely did their job, even if sometimes what we're seeing doesn't make sense, and I'll talk a bit about that in a bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a bad film as such. It's not great, but it's, you know, you can see there's money behind it. This is incidentally produced by Platinum Dunes, which is Michael Bay's horror and genre film production company, which kind of explains the lack of subtlety. Michael Bay being he of explosions and Transformers fame. Yeah, this is not subtle. Platinum Dunes went through a phase of nearly 10 years of making purely very over-the-top remakes of famous horror movies. This was one of the first, I seem to remember. I remember incidentally seeing this in cinemas when I was a wee baby Pixie. I wasn't that small. I must have been that small at one point, but I don't think I was outside in the world when I was that small. No, I was a wee little teenage thing with no taste. I remember being a little bit freaked out by some of it in cinemas. Now, as a hardened horror nut, I can look at it with a bit more of a subjective view, maybe, probably not. I mean, this is still kind of my realm of my kind of favourite realm of ghost stories. So this film opens up with the murders, and it really doesn't shy away from how grisly that whole business was. It also, this is where it starts getting a bit sort of, you know, the unsubtleties showing. It starts off with adding a little girl character who was not part of the family. She was not killed. She wasn't real. But this little girl character, Jodie, is shown cowering in a cupboard and being gunned down, and it's really quite nasty. Then we cut straight on to the Lutz family, looking at the house and going, gosh, this is just so, wow, this is great, it's beautiful, oh, can we have it? The house incidentally does look stunning. God, like, is this what the housing market was like in the 70s in America? Dang. The film does sort of elaborate on, or rather exaggerate, the house. In reality, I mean, from the pictures I've seen, it still looks like a bloody gorgeous place. I mean, it's this sort of Dutch colonial style wooden house, but it's suburban, but backing onto a lake or something, and very, very beautiful. God, I have no idea how much those places go for, but if that was in the UK, that would be millions. Goodness. In the film, it seems to be a bit bigger. It's certainly more remote. In reality, you know, okay, it was a detached house, but it was still within a suburb. Here, it's kind of, it seems to be a long way from anybody else, which kind of, you know, ups the horror thing to it. You know, it's the old cliche of, you know, being a bit more remote. And I think it does add a little. Obviously, it's removing from reality, however muddy the reality of the Amityville Horror really was. So yeah, you know, they move in and we get all the nice stuff of, you know, with all of these films you have to have the status quo before everything goes a little bit strange, because otherwise there are no stakes. If you open, I mean, like many films of this era, you know, you open with something punchy to sort of set the scene and go, yes everybody, this is a horror film, this is what you're signing up for, and then we get the status quo where we set up how the family normally are, because if you go straight into Family Gone Nuts, we don't care. So yeah, we have the family moving in and looking around the house, and it's all very cute. You know, the little girls are very, very sweet, and it's, you know, normal. Things very slow, very quickly start to go downhill. I mean, yes, it's over a 28-day period, but gosh, it's they don't start off quietly with these hauntings. You know, little girl character becomes the imaginary friend of the youngest of the girls. Yes, it's that trope again. Yeah, it's actually rather unpleasant. I mean, they've created this character within the realms of a real murder case, and, you know, oh, this is my imaginary friend Jodie, she lives in the cupboards, and I'm like, oh, why do you do this to me, Hollywood? Please stop. Please stop making actual murders worse than they really were. Please stop playing around with murder victims. It's kind of gross. And this is coming from somebody who really likes gory, dumb horror movies. I mean, I guess it's part of the territory, but I'm not sure I quite agree with it on an ethical level. So yeah, we've got sort of that stuff going on. The father, stepfather or whatever he is, George Lutz, goes very quickly kind of crazy, and there's a kind of nice effect that they do with that, where he's got these sort of I'm assuming they're contact lenses that give him a sort of bloodshot effect, which kind of gives this sort of not quite possessed, but very sort of haven't had enough sleep, starting to go a little bit nuts effect, which is quite nice. That's one of the few more subtle effects in this film. And he starts behaving increasingly strangely and quite aggressively towards the rest of the family, particularly the kids. There's a little boy who there's a scene where he's getting this little boy to hold a block of wood on a chopping block and then chopping, and that's borderline abuse, the way it's, you know, like, oh, don't move, if you move then I move, and like, that's abuse, guys, that's abuse. Bearing in mind George Letts was still alive at this point, that's so we get a lot of that. We get a lot of increasingly weird stuff going on, you know, ghosts appearing, voices repeatedly saying catch him, kill him, catch him, kill him. That was incidentally the tagline for the film, was catch him and kill him, spelled with a K in both cases. I don't know, and then they're really trying to drive home that tagline, to the point of having you know those letter magnets that you have in the fridge, spelling that out, and there's nothing subtle about this film. It's explicitly stated that in this universe, DeFeo, as in the actual murderer, was hearing voices and believed that his family were demons. There's a suggestion, I don't think it comes up in this film, but it definitely does in the original, and I'm fairly certain came up in the book. I say I haven't read it, but from what I read, that all of this was down to and I quote, Native American burial ground. Yes, we're in Stephen King territory. There is no Native American burial ground on that site. But America, please stop doing that. Just no. It's really rude to your indigenous population, if nothing else. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, there's an implication that these voices are coming from something other than the person's own mind. Why? Sorry, excuse me, I've still got a bit of a cold and a bit, so if I'm a bit scattier than usual, that'll be why. So yeah, I mean, like I say, that nothing about this film is subtle, but it kind of makes up for that in the fact that some of the imagery is actually pretty cool. For what seems to be fairly, not low budget, but medium budget. So there's actually fairly little in the way of CGI, which is nice. Definitely nice to see in a 2000s film. There's a lot of practical effects and a lot of just sort of relying on makeup effects, which is nice. As much as I am uncomfortable about the imaginary, fictional child ghost character, the makeup effect on her is really nice. She's just very pale with veins and then a wound in her forehead, and you get occasional shots of the exit wound. There's a sequence where the sexy babysitter, because of course there's a sexy babysitter, goes into the cupboard as a dare and is confronted with the ghost, and I won't spoil what happens, but it's pretty gross and kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, sorry, my computer just died there. This is not a good film, but some of the imagery makes up for it. There's some hallucination-y sequences where there's every type of makeup you can imagine turning up. Some of it doesn't work. I mean, okay, we've kind of suggested that the unwell contingent of the film believe that there's some sort of demonic possession thing going on. Okay, fair enough, that explains the funny eyes and the funny skin and stuff, but you made it fairly clear that these victims were shot. Why is there a hanging ghost girl at what point? Yeah, like I say, throws away subtlety and then replaces it with silly. There's a lot of stuff that seems very, again, I mean, I use this word a lot in these reviews, but derivative. I can see shades of, obviously, The Exorcist, shades of The Omen, and obviously, the Amityville Horror movies, but that kind of goes without saying. So yeah, mixed feelings on this one. I didn't hate it, but my memory of it really enjoying it when I saw it in cinemas when I was a wee young thing, yeah, it didn't quite live up to that. So yeah, I mean, this one's not bad. If you're a fan of the original, it might really annoy you. If you're a fan of the books, it will probably really annoy you. But if you're into sort of, the average ghost story, the average haunting story, it's not a bad one. Worth the look, I'd say. If nothing else, the visuals are kind of cool. Even if you have to skip past some nonsense to get to them. So yeah, that's it for that one. Next up, we are looking at a film called, hang on, what was it called? Apartment 41. Hang on, I haven't looked at my notes because I am hopeless and I can't actually remember the name of the film. Apartment 143. I am hoping that's not the 143rd one in a series. I'm just assuming that's the name of an apartment. Again, I know nothing about this. Based on the preview picture on Netflix, it looks like another haunting story. I like my hauntings, so fingers crossed. So I will see you soon for another dose, and up until then, bye bye. Oh, I've got to find a better way of doing these.